is a subject that has undergone many changes. This is the evolution of photography. At the beginning of the 20th century, photography was just starting to become something that the public could have access to. Although it was invented technically many years earlier, it first started to trickle down to the people who could afford it, starting around 1913 and 1914, with the release of 35mm film cameras such as the Tourist Multiple and the Simplex. These cameras were what allowed the public to finally have access to photography in their hands, if they could afford it. Nowadays, the Tourist Multiple would be $4,000, which was around $173 in the money of the time. These type of cameras would not see too much change until around 1936, when more affordable cameras were introduced to the public. The Argus A was a camera that did so. It was a 35mm film camera, but in a much more affordable package, which was around $10 at the time, or closer to $180 in today's money. Along with the Argus A, there was a massive innovation with the release of color film invented by Kodak. And now all this technology was starting to become available to the consumer. Companies were now aiming to make more affordable cameras that could appeal to the masses. The next big change in photography wouldn't really come around until the 1960s in the form of SLRs. SLR standing for single lens reflex, which is an optical viewfinding system that allowed the photographer to look directly through their lens. One of the first consumer cameras to implement this was the Nikon F. This SLR technology eventually became standard across all cameras of the time, and I'm actually lucky enough to have one of such cameras in my possession, specifically the Pentax K1000. Released in 1976, the Pentax K1000 was an immensely popular 35mm film SLR, so popular that it sold over 3 million units. Other cameras such as the Canon AE1 and Nikon F series were also immensely popular at the time. The release of these cameras allowed the public to have even more options and have photography become more accessible to them. And for a while, these SLR film cameras were the champions. Everyone would buy them, and there wasn't really much change to the way photography was as a whole until 1980, with the introduction of digital cameras. These cameras allowed for the photos a photographer would take to be developed instantly, and became known as DSLRs, adding digital onto the SLR name, so the full name being Digital Single Lens Reflex Cameras were now being introduced into the market. Originally, these were very expensive, but as time went on, the prices of these cameras lowered, allowing the public to have more access to them. Another massive change that came with these digital cameras were the integration of electronic elements into lenses, and this led to the creation of autofocus, which technically was around during the era of film, but just for intensive purposes of this video, it became more widespread during the era of digital. Now a photographer could simply pick up their camera, dial in their settings, take a photo, and have it instantly ready for them. Beforehand, a photographer would have to set up their own darkroom or go somewhere to get their film developed, which takes time. But digital photography made this an instant process. Now that companies were making DSLRs, a lot of different options were being released. Brands like Nikon and Canon created multiple lineups for their cameras. Canon had a more professional line known as the 1D series, while they also had the Rebel lineup of cameras, which were more affordable and targeted towards the general public. They also made more cameras in between, such as the 5D and 6D series. With such a massive increase in options for the general public, DSLRs became the standard. What everyone wanted to buy was no longer a film camera, it became a DSLR. It was instant. You could have great images at the click of a button if you knew how to use the camera. And while the lenses for these cameras haven't really changed too much since the release of DSLRs, there has been massive innovation in third-party companies creating lenses to challenge the native lenses for each company. Specifically, a company called Sigma has been leading the charge in creating more affordable versions of previously exclusive lenses, and ultimately driving competition. But lenses in terms of their size and optics haven't really changed. Take a look at this Canon 50mm f1.8 compared to this Pentax 55mm f2. The lenses are 50 years apart in terms of their releases, yet they're similar in size, similar in optics. The only difference is that the Canon is made out of plastic, meant to be more affordable, and the Pentax is lacking autofocus, such as was the technology at the time. It didn't exist. And another great thing that was introduced with these new cameras was weather sealing. Modern cameras have incredible weather sealing, and that allows photographers, if they so choose, to go out and take photos in the rain, which is something that I've actually been doing a lot more of recently, since it creates a more unique look that not as many people are going to capture. And phones have cameras now, apparently. As if the amount of options to choose from for photography weren't great enough, in 2015, mirrorless cameras started to become mainstream. Mirrorless cameras got rid of the clunky and often breakable system of mirrors inside of the optical viewfinder and changed it to a digital screen inside the viewfinder. Sony took the entire market by storm with the release of their Sony A7 mirrorless lineup of full-frame cameras. These new cameras are faster than ever before, higher in resolution, and can shoot at incredibly high burst rates. And unlike the painful switch from film to digital, switching from a DSLR to a mirrorless camera isn't actually that hard, thanks to most companies introducing adapters to allow their older DSLR lenses to be attached to their mirrorless cameras, which will give the lenses full functionality on the new cameras. And now that we've established the history and evolution of these cameras in photography as a whole, I want to make some predictions for the future. I think within 100 years, we might have cameras that quite literally surpass the human eye, resulting in great cameras for great prices. Anyways, this has been the evolution of photography. I'm Rocco. Thank you for watching this video, and if you enjoyed, it would be appreciated if you could drop a like or even consider subscribing to my channel. The buttons are down below if you so choose to click them. And any and all sources cited for this video are listed down below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.